Okay, students, so now we have an example for decision. Decision allows you to literally make a decision within your code to go one direction or another direction. It always has to be a true or false decision ultimately, but within a true or false decision you can add another true or false decision, and so on and so on. You can also put a sequence of commands within the true or false decision-making construct. The whole idea of one entry point and one exit point also applies here. That is, there's one point where we start into the decision, and then ultimately we end the decision and move on to the next command after the structure. So we need to understand that the idea of one entry point and one exit point is important because we can mix and match all of these constructs that are part of structured programming. So in this particular example, I have a text box and a button here. And when I click the button, it's going to show you whether the number that it's counting is even or odd. Now you can't see the button here, but I can click it when I run it. That will help. And when I click it, you can see it'll say odd, even, odd, even. So let's put a small additional change to this on the form. I'm going to create another text box, and I'm going to put it right there. And we'll modify the code in a minute, but first I want you to see that this first thing that goes in here, this is just the same as if I were to say x equals x plus 1. You'll see that programmers using C# will commonly say something like this because it's shorter to type. Okay, so this particular section, button is clicked. I called that the button clicker. And then x++ simply means the same thing as x equals x plus 1. So that's just a quick explanation of that. This is shorter, so we type that if we're only incrementing by 1. We come in here and we say x, and this symbol means modulo, which is to say we're going to divide, and we're going to either get a 0 if it's evenly divisible, or a 1 if it is not evenly divisible. And when you're doing an if statement, you're going to have a situation where something is either true or false. Now, if you say, let's say that we come in and this is a 1, then 1 is not evenly divisible by 2 with whole numbers. So this is going to be equal to a 1, and 1 is not equal to 0. Okay, so that's false. So we go to the else statement, which is the false portion of this structure, and then it executes this statement, and then we are out of the structure. If we had a 2, it would say 2 modulo 2 would be equal to 0. 0 is equal to 0, so that's true. It executes this even statement, and then it drops out of the structure. It's finished. It skips the else. When you run it, I was going to add some code here for this so that you could see the number. Let's see, each time through. Let's do it before. And what did I call that? I might not have called it anything specific. Text box 1, that's fine for this. text box 1 dot text equals let's see, x dot, we're going to have to convert it to a string, that is to say something that is considered characters, because text boxes only take characters. Okay, so when we run this and we click the thing, oops, I didn't run it, I missed. Okay, so we run it and I click it and it says odd, and you can see the number is 1, and I click it again and I get even because the number is 2, and then odd because the number is 3, again even because the number is 4. Okay, so you can feel free to type this in and experiment with it, you know, just to see what this is all about. But again, we have a couple of sequence commands here. That is, we've got this one and then we have this one. They're sequence, they come one right after the other, and then the decision statement comes in sequence after. Okay, so this is a decision sequence, and it decides a decision structure that comes right after the sequence, and the decision structure makes a decision, true or false. Now I could put multiple commands in each of these things, but I would have to put them into braces like this in order to have more than one command. Okay, so I'm just going to put message box dot show example okay, and this. Now then, so when you're going to have more than one line, for whatever reason they have to be in braces, you can do that for else as well. When I run this, you'll see that odd only has that one line, but 2 generates the 2 plus the word example that I typed in. Okay, and then I can close that. Odd 4 again, so it has example, and so on. Not very practical to have that extra line in, but just so you know. And also, it's probably also worth noting here that if you have a single line, you can still have braces around it. It will still work just fine, so it might be just as good to get into the habit of putting braces around the items that are part of the structures like this. So you can, for instance, put braces here, and it might seem a little excessive to do that for a single line, a single statement like this, but please note that if these are properly used, that you could print this out on a piece of paper if you wanted to, or if you look very carefully, there are dotted lines between these, and also there are things out here, so you can collapse this and you can see that this is an if-else structure, but it doesn't show you what the lines are unless you uncollapse them. Now, why would you want to do that? This is the button clicker click statements that you've hit the button clicker event, and you can collapse that, and that only shows you just the event. Okay, so that's a very helpful thing sometimes. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video.